this is how exactly I'm feeling. Just beat and exhausted. You just done, Chloe? Howdy. Another day here at Gone Rogue Games. So, I know people say all I do is complain on this channel, so I'm going to keep to the tradition and get some complaining out. Because today has been an absolutely exhausting, mentally, emotionally day of finally doing Edge of Eternity's allocations. First of all, distributors were so late getting final allocations done for Edge of Eternities. I think they're waiting for the last minute to make sure that they have all their ducks in a row, which of course puts pressure on me to try to then get all the money that needs to be collected so I can pay my distributors to then get Edge of Eternities. Yeah, it's just exhausting. So this has been another set that I'm definitely going to rant and rave about. Less raving, a lot more ranting. About Edge of Eternities, because Edge of Eternities is the first set after Final Fantasy. And even though it's a hot set, we're definitely seeing a shift in my opinion, a huge warning sign with going forward with Magic the Gathering. And this is something that I think existed with Duskmourn and Foundations. Not so much with Tarkir, because Tarkir ended up being an incredibly hot set. And we saw it try to happen with Aether Drift, but Aether Drift did like a complete reversal. And everything from that set ended up being hot garbage. And I'm expecting the Aether Drift starts to get blown out on Amazon, and you're going to start seeing deals at distribution, because there's a lot of... the thing is, too, and I'll talk more about this in this video, which is a huge warning sign for Magic the Gathering, because the entire culture has shifted now. And we're in uncharted territories going forward. Everyone that tells you that this is a good thing that is happening with the huge hype of collectors and investors coming to Magic, and it's just a good thing overall because it's bringing more excitement, I'm not so sure. In fact, I am a lot more skeptical going forward. That's why in this channel I've just always hampered utility, butts on seats. That is what makes a game, is people playing the game. Collecting is an afterthought. As long as the majority of the focus is on playing the game, I think we'll have a healthy game going forward. And then you can always sell collector sets and all those specialty sets if you have enough robust people to actually be willing to buy them. But it always should be in the... Hello, Zach. Where'd Zach? He came in. That is an employee entrance for employees only. You need to use the public. Yeah, what did Zach put on here? See what toxic environment I work in? All of a sudden, Zach put up this sign. I don't know why he put up this sign. Employees must stop crying before returning to work. You guys got to get me out of this hostile environment. But anyway, where's my thought process going before I was rudely interrupted by someone using the employee entrance? So anyone telling you that this is awesome, this is amazing, this market is the greatest thing ever, like, I think that Edge of Eternities is a big wake-up call too. So let me back up and give you my full, and I probably have to use some cheat sheets here because my mind is actually mush right now. So I'm going to kind of read over some stuff I've jotted down and kind of go over it. Jotted down some Q&A questions, and I'm going to try to answer them here on video from the store for perspective of someone that does this at a reasonable volume, I'd say. So, in this Edge of Eternities, I'm going to do, 40, 50K, which is lower than normal because of allocations. That was the most I was able to get. I basically put in for max allocations from every distributor. And this is definitely, it's about 50, 60% of what I normally get and have available to sell here locally, sell to my patrons, and have product left over, really to keep us in really stocked until the next release. And that's kind of the name of the game in this industry, is you want to be able to cultivate these games until more product is released from future sets. But anyway, Aether Drift, I was talking about how Aether Drift had kind of a reversal, and it was the set where collector boosters were definitely starting to become pushed. So let me give you a history of collector boosters. Let's just give a history of Magic the Gathering product. So in the very beginning of Magic the Gathering, there were basically just two products. And I guess there were fat packs too. You had the pre-release, actually you didn't have pre-release kits, because if you're old enough in this genre in Magic the Gathering, what they used to do for pre-releases is just actually open up draft boosters and give everyone 6. And you'd usually get like a promo. They'd have a bunch of promos that you'd give out for attending the pre-release. But pre-release kits, I believe, didn't come till much later. Maybe it was Return to Ravnica was the first one they started doing that. Because I remember doing Mirrodin Besieged, and it still was packs as well. So I'm not sure exactly when pre-release kits were a thing. But when I first got into Magic the Gathering, and for the majority of Magic's first 15 years, they had one product to rule them all. I mean, they had starter decks. Occasionally they'd have decks you could play with, like decks you could play out of the box. You had like challenger deck type things, and you'd get like from the vaults. So there were like specialty products that you could get, but it was mainly the kind of the flagship product was your draft booster. And you could get any card out of the draft booster. And so you did have collectors. You had plenty of people collecting and buying booster boxes just to crack to try to find the cards. But for the first easily 15, 20 years of Magic the Gathering, utility definitely was king. Prices of cards reflected how much they saw in decks. Like I remember the most expensive card during like Kamigawa was the Jit. And it was because most decks were playing 4-ofs. And that was kind of the culture of and even collectible cards too, they're mainly utility driven. So this what we're seeing with like Final Fantasy, and I even think it started before that when people really started collecting like Praetors and oil slick cards and stuff. So, I mean, there has been this collectible aspect. When Planeswalkers were released too, Planeswalkers had this. When Planeswalkers were very first released, like any Planeswalker, no matter how trash the Planeswalker was collectible, because that was like what people were actually collecting at that point. And then, that just got oversaturated with how many Planeswalkers they put out. And then no one, of course, could keep up with the storyline. Back then, when they first released play boosters, we had a much more simplified storyline that people could kind of keep track of and keep up with what was going on in the multiverse. And now we're all over the place, especially with these dress-up sets that no one knows, what is going on. No one has any like fandom towards like Chandra or Jace anymore. And yeah, collectability is kind of weird now. So Bloomburrow too occasionally get sets where people just like squirrels or dragons and have these like collectible aspect to them that don't make sense on utility reasons. But for the vast majority of Magic the Gathering, the price has been a direct reflection on how much the cards actually see either competitive play or casual play. And the product to actually deliver that was the play boosters. And in Wildsville Drain, that's when they came up with the experiment of doing collector boosters. And at first they were just an absolute hit because Wizards of the Coast did make them more bang for your buck than actually going the other routes for going the draft route. So you could get more foils in them, and people figured out and at that point too, foil multipliers were still a thing. So foils were actually something people wanted, just the regular foils. Nowadays, there is typically no spread between foils and regular cards. In fact, oftentimes the cheapest card is foils because when people go to search, especially if it's utility driven, they're searching cards for decks, people just automatically assume foils are worth more, so they buy out the normal version, and oftentimes that actually leads the foils to being cheaper than the normal version. So Wizards of the Coast then realized that collector boosters are going to have to be more incentivized, and I understand that why Wizards of the Coast did this. They wanted to push the cost of creating a collector booster is probably the same cost of creating even something like a pre-release kit. The amount of material in a pre-release kit is probably very similar to a collector's. It doesn't cost any more for them to print a foil than it does a normal one. Maybe there is a little bit more, but it's not substantial in the scope of things of how much they actually pay for it. I mean, look at this Commander Masters collector booster box here. This thing is super expensive and this is a good one because this one has a few packs in it, and it goes for, like I think 8 times more, 9 times more distributor cost than a pre-release pack did for the same product. So I understand in a business sense why Wizards of the Coast really wanted to kind of milk these collectors and these whales. But it is now led to like I want to say almost like a collectible creep, to where they keep having to be kind of one-upping themselves with each collector release. And so we started seeing things like surge foils, serialized cards, and ultra chase cards be putting in collectors. The problem is the play boosters and the tried set boosters, all of this stuff is not scaled with collector boosters. And so when you're looking at overall value of purchasing a Magic the Gathering product, of course your whales and your collectors are going to go for collectors, but just your regular players are now being forced into collectors because that's basically the only thing that is really worth your money. It doesn't hold true, but even in people's perspective, it does early on. It takes a while for like utility to build up of some of these boxes to where the actual contents of the playable cards can actually be a better deal. And typically people are still not being very fair to when they're analyzing products, because these are products that have a hard time ever getting above distribution cost, whereas collectors, they go up quite fast, and they're still, even at that discrepancy between the two, collector boosters are still a better bang of the buck. Even right now with Edge of Eternities, where we just saw a blowout on, I think TCG Player was offering like $100 play boosters versus collector boosters are going for $400. I can tell you, like, even right now, looking at prices of what you could get for the specialized cards out of collectors, it'd probably still be your better bang for your buck to go the collector routes. And it also is like these things are so anchored to each other price-wise that if cards go up in value, even the normal version, the collector boosters are still going to scale better. So it's just a really bad scenario for all these other products ever being able to compete with collectors. And then the biggest issue with how they do packs now is the other products that they release for Magic the Gathering, being pre-release kits and bundles, also contain play and not collectors. And so those products are now absolutely inferior. So I guess this long-winded history of where we're going with products is coming back to full circle. So I've been doing this for really hard since 2018, I would say, for running this Patreon, really collecting numbers, really gauging the market of what people wanted. And even during Wildsville Drain, when they introduced collectors, there still was a more healthy dispersion of what people wanted. So you'd have your player that wanted your bundles and your play boosters. You'd have your people that wanted the commander decks, and you'd have your people that wanted the collector boosters. And a lot of people didn't want to touch collector boosters because they're not a collector. They weren't interested in foils, and they'd put their money. And at that point, there was less of a spread between, because there again wasn't a lot of these specialized, ultra specialized cards. And if I back up with Wildsville Drain, as I stated, like, it only lasted a little bit with when the foil EV, of course, came down to nothing, and then collector boosters actually per slot of cards. And I think that New Capenna was like the real where collector boosters failed because no one really cared about the gold versions. They weren't very rare. There was nothing really special out of collector boosters. And at that point, it was a lackluster set too. And it was just like collector boosters just at that point didn't make sense. And still at that point, though, there was a good spread between people buying the different products that actually fulfilled their needs. However, what I've seen now with Edge of Eternities, and what I'm seeing, especially from what I'm after talking with the distributors, is it's everyone and their dog only wants collectors. And I can't blame them, because Wizards of the Coast has kind of put us in this situation of where it is just all the smart money, all of the fun money, all of the utility money, everything should be going towards collectors. And there's a lot of negative consequences that we can have from this demand for collectors versus the rest of the products going forward. First of all, I don't know how Wizards of the Coast solves this, because they either have to print more collectors to meet this demand, because right now everything is in just complete revolt. Distributors, players, stores, no one can get enough collectors. Everyone is frustrated because there's definitely more of a demand, and of course, when that happens, people are going to demand Wizards of the Coast create more collectors. But it continues to add on to this kind of bloat of the problem. Is the more collectors that they produce, the more they're going to have to put value into collectors to keep justifying the purchases over play. Like the amount that it keeps stretching from. Because part of collectability is scarcity. I mean, utility is good because it's a direct correlation of people actually playing the card. It's simple supply and demand. But collectability is often only pegged on how scarce the card is compared to what's available on the market. And if they it's a definite damned if you do situation for Wizards of the Coast. If they print more collectors to try to meet this new demand of what distributors and stores and players are begging for, then the value of collectors is going to falter. And if the value of collectors falter, where it already has this massive spread, as I've stated, like 4 boxes of Edge of Eternity play, probably still are not worth it compared to the 400 boxes of our $400 Edge of Eternity collectors. And it's still in the purchasing behavior of people, that's still being reflected right now in real time of people still deciding that they'd rather purchase a $400 collector than 4 play booster boxes. So again, something has to give, but other unintended consequences, which I used to really bitch about Commander decks because this is the problem of when they release products all at the same day, is no one wants to play in the pre-release. No one wants to spend money on pre-release kits and on play boosters when they can just buy collector boosters. That's what everyone wants. And what we saw with Final Fantasy, I think, was an anomaly, where when people couldn't get collector boosters, they're like, okay, fine, I'll buy the other products. And there's just like anything Final Fantasy was liquid gold. This is not the case for Edge of Eternities. Like I say at the very first of the video, this is the first like real set where we're seeing this play out, where it's like play boosters are not above distributor cost. They are right there. Distributors are actually now trying to incentivize and require stores to buy play boosters because how they're getting allocated is based upon how many play boosters they buy from Wizards of the Coast. So Wizards of the Coast is just doing like this, basically not a 1-for-1, but like a 6-for-1 or a 36-for-1 is how they're determining how to print these things. And there just seems to be now a big bloat of this other product, and I'm not sure the market's going to be able to absorb even Edge of Eternities, even something like this. It does seem to be a hot set. And if we kind of go back to like Duskmourn and Foundations, we're starting to see this discrepancy too with these products. And I'm not sure how many sets that this market can actually handle before this bloat just becomes like too great. And at this point, what's the point? Like is Magic just going to be collectors? The flagship product has moved now. It has moved from play boosters, where it should be the flagship product because you can do everything with a play booster. You can hopefully find some cards to collect out of that and get excited about. You can actually draft with them. You can play pre-releases and seal with them. You can play leagues. You can add to your collection. All those things can be done with play boosters, whereas collector boosters literally are just for show. That's it. It's like, yes, people like to bling out their decks and things like that, but the amount of players, and maybe this demographic has just shifted so much and I'm just a boomer and just don't understand, that it's all about collectability now and I should, shut my mouth. But in this industry now that I've been in for over 20 years, that does still seem to be the robust and healthy thing, is when people have accessible products to be able to get. I mean, that's what, I'd like to complain so much about this crap. I was going to show this because, I'm still complaining about Pokemon because it's impossible to get. You love my allocations for White Flare and Black Bolt, my whopping 5 ETBs of both, of, like I said, tens of thousands of dollars per release of everything else, every other product that I can get my hands on. And, these Pokemon continues to be impossible to get. Regardless how long I've been in this stupid business. But anyway, another rant for another day. But I used to complain about Pokemon, but at least Pokemon kind of makes sense with how they create their products because everything contains just booster packs. So any old booster pack, you can get the best card. You have a chance, no matter what, to get that best card. And so everything flies off the shelf. So whether it be these EX decks, whether it be this ETB, whether it be anything, then the product sells because it's all pegged to the booster pack. Whereas now that Wizards of the Coast has done the opposite, where only the cool things can come out of the collector boosters, then this stuff is just so at the mercy of basically utility before this stuff starts to sell. Or in the case of Final Fantasy, it's like, and that still isn't like a feel-good purchase. It isn't like people are like, oh, I couldn't get a collector, so it's just begrudgingly, I'll have to get play booster to get my hands on any Final Fantasy. And that is kind of reflective in the discrepancy between even Final Fantasy play boosters versus collector boosters. So it's just a really, really worrisome situation because A, they're not doing what Pokemon does. So they can't compare themselves to the collectability of Pokemon because, as I stated, it's accessible. Everything in Pokemon is still, even though how scarce it is right now, someone can still buy a pack. The lowest entry level product can still get you the best card. Whereas everything is now being shifted towards collector boosters that now continue to have that higher and higher markup of people being able to get anything like valuable and exciting. So again, the unintended consequences I was stating is like events start to dry out, where people don't want to play in the pre-release because they'd rather have a collector. And if they don't get their collector, it still like puts a bad taste in their mouth. And like I said, like with me, with the services I run, it's the discrepancy between the amount of people that used to buy other products and collector boosters is the pendulum has swung so far, where I'll have orders for thousands of collector boosters, and like, you know, I think I fulfilled every play booster. I think I had orders in for like 185 play boosters, and I fulfilled them all. I think I cut just a couple people that wanted high amounts of play boosters just to you know, give some padding, because I was right around the max allocations of what I was able to get from distributors for play boosters, which I think I'll be able to get more anyway. So I probably shouldn't even cut those patrons. But with collector boosters, you know, I had everyone, like everyone that signed up for service wanted a collector. Very few people wanted to play. Very few people wanted bundles and commander decks and everything else in comparison to collectors. And I don't know why I'm the only one that just thinks that is a terrible sign, where now the flagship product is this ultra gambly, and again, these things are not worth it. That's the problem with collectors. We've done the numbers on all of them. Is the discrepancy between, I know I'm using discrepancy a lot, maybe I should use a better word, of actually like the collector boosters that win, you big time win. You make out with $100 cards, you feel good about, oh man, I made my money's worth and, you know, 4x my money. But the ones that don't, yeah, they can have some really, I mean, just watch the RGP College's collector booster box openings and you know, be prepared to kind of cringe at some of the ones that are, you know, can miss. And again, you can do that with Pokemon, but it's just, at that point, it's just all booster packs. So, I still think that Pokemon is a bad business model for Wizards of the Coast to try to replicate. And I even think that these other, like Star Wars Unlimited, man, I can't believe they just came right out the gates with Carbonite boosters, which are basically collector boosters. And that is a game that, man, I don't know. I think Carbonite boosters, like, it was a quick, easy sell, but with every set, it seems same thing, that now everyone just wants Carbonite boosters rather than collectors. But again, we're not talking about Star Wars, we're talking about Magic. So anyway, like I said, I was going to talk more about my thoughts here. Maybe I'll do this for a part 2 video, because I jotted down an entire list of stuff that I wanted to talk about that definitely does go over kind of the core talking points better than what I'm doing in this kind of rambly, tired video. But you kind of got to see the raw me of kind of going over, you know, what I'm experiencing. So I'm frustrated. Stores are frustrated. Everyone is so frustrated right now. And it just doesn't seem to be like, the excitement was definitely there with Final Fantasy, to where all product was hot, and so it gave this big kind of missed signal that the problem wasn't as bad as it is. But play boosters absolutely need to be addressed. There has to be some sort of pendulum swing back the other way, to where people want to go to pre-releases. Like in my idea, I think that pre-releases, the only thing that should be released on pre-release weekend is drafts, and they should, you know, be able to fire drafts and be able to fire limited with pre-release kits. And Wizards of the Coast, they need to delay collectors. Maybe 2 weeks. I know that's the Star Wars Limited used to do too, but it's just like Wizards of the Coast, it always puts them in a bind, because they know exactly how fickle the market is, where things go cold so quickly, where the attention span of most gamers right now is, I mean, just look at like things like Duskmourn, or, you know, like Wildsville Drain and a few other sets, Lost Cavern. They've started to peak back up interest, but that was months, in some cases years later, of after they were released. And this is another set too, like Innistrad Remasters. Like the attention span of Innistrad Remasters was just, I don't even think it lasted a week before people had moved on and quit caring about this product. And, you know, some things are starting to become a little bit scarce now. And we have, like, you know, a rising tide lifts all boats with Final Fantasy and all this other stuff that have just made Magic super popular. That we're actually seeing a lot of glut actually being purchased out of distribution level. But I think it's like sloppy seconds, though. It's not like, it's like stores are buying these things and carrying these things, and people are purchasing these things because they don't have the option of purchasing collector boosters. So they're like, well, crap, if I can't buy this, then I'm forced to buy this, and any Magic is better than no Magic. But still, that's just not like a feel-good scenario for anyone involved. And that's, again, the same kind of situation that I'm in, where I offer this entire catalog of items for people to purchase, and, you know, everyone's disappointed because everyone just wants collectors. And Magic's just more than that. And again, I think it's just like a cheap kind of little trick that Wizards of the Coast has done. And I know they're patting themselves on the back and thinking this is the greatest thing ever of going this collector route, but they've actually murdered their ability to do master sets in the future and selling like play boosters. But I guess at a business standpoint, like I said, when you can actually print these things and people are willing, that's the problem is, I guess if you blame anyone, it's us. It's us, the buyers, that have allowed this to happen, to purchase collector boosters, to pay just insane prices for little rectangles of cards that cost the exact same amount to print in the foil versions they do for the normal version. The foils still warp. You know, they're good for binders and that's it. They're good for slabbing and grading and that's it. And at that point, if you want to actually play with them, it becomes such a liability. And I don't know. Again, am I acting just like a boomer here that just misses the point? Maybe I'm just like, Pokemon is just, and crypto, like all of this has just led to this culture of everyone that just wants to turn everything in, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, it's great. I've done it. I've turned my hobby into a job, into a way to make money. But I don't think that it's not sustainable when everybody has to do that. There has to be some end-level consumption, and that's where collectors do come in, but that's usually where players used to come in. It used to be all about making that pro tour, and, you know, same thing with collecting. It is, you know, I don't get it. I don't know why people get just an insurmountable amount of joy by collecting things. and you know, I guess I'm a little bit hypocritical when I get so excited about rocks. And it's literally the same thing, except mine are like little shiny pieces of I guess my other form of carbon, when everyone else is just doing it in cardboard form. But yeah, it's just it doesn't make sense to me as much as it probably should. Anyway, I'm definitely getting to rambly, so we'll have to do a part 2 video of this video, because I do want to discuss this in a better form where I'm not just so crazy and rambly and took too much caffeine and went to the gym and now I'm not going to be able to sleep all night. So if you are a patient, kind of bear with me, give me some slack here, because I did have a good heartfelt discussion with some of the distributors, and they're absolutely frustrated too, especially over Final Fantasy. I talked to one distributor for a decent amount about how Costco gets refilled, and they're begging Wizards of the Coast, refill us, refill us. We have so many people, stores that are just begging for product because they can sell it. They need it to run events. They need it to keep this momentum going. And what does Wizards of the Coast do? They just dump a bunch on Costco. And go to your local Costco, because it's just, and I don't make sense from a business standpoint for Wizards, because I know they get better margins. They don't have to have that ability for, like, Costco works on such slim margins that Wizards can probably mark it up a lot, and Costco will be fine at selling it, and they know it will sell. Everyone knows it will sell, and it's just like, all right, this is the best way for us to capitalize on this IP on this product. And make the most for ourselves. Like, again, I know Wizards of the Coast has been through a lot of jealousy of Magic the Gathering. There was a time period, I remember during the early modern era, there were some articles written that like the secondary market was making way more than Wizards of the Coast was on Magic the Gathering. It's like that era when fetch lands went from 15 to like $90. And there was just so much more money in the secondary market than there was in the primary market, like of Wizards of the Coast making it. And I know that's kind of where they went, the secret layer route and the box set commander decks and the collectors, because if they can put these sealed products where they can actually capture the most amount of money, that's what a business wants to do. But at the same point, like, if that was so good, how come every other industry doesn't do that? Like, they even look at even things like iPhones. Like, iPhones have a big margins for the sellers to make. And same things, even like tires for your car. There's big margins for your tire company to actually make, because they know how strategic those partners are. So yeah, I'm way rambly right now. I guess this is kind of like late night Kevin thoughts. So part 2 will come with this, because again, I think this is really important to really have a discussion about going forward with the kind of cultural shift of Magic now going into this really, as I stated, gambly, collector, slabbing culture. And it's going to be interesting to navigate this, because Wizards of the Coast does not have the same policy. They've never had the same policy of something like Pokemon has had, with the way that they get product accessible to the mass market. Wizards of the Coast has definitely been a way more utility-driven market than people want to admit. And with collectors like I said, I don't know the solution, because the solution right now for Wizards of the Coast is they have to print more collectors. If not, they're just going to continue to have angry people across the board. How long can they kind of run on the fumes of people saying, okay, I can't get a collectors, then I might as well just buy a play booster? Like that dissatisfaction cannot last long term, and people can't be playing like where were the like Magic used to be so susceptible to this. I remember with master sets that people would just scream when like a product would go, and rightfully so. We saw it with like Eternal Masters, like Modern Masters 2017, that was a big one. There was a lot of runs on some of these products, Ultimate Masters, and people got super upset about how expensive it got to actually, you know, buy these things, and the stores were ripping everyone off, blah, blah, blah. But at this point too, like stores, you cannot blame stores with putting collector boosters at $400. And I'm actually surprised that collector boosters are not going for like $500 or $600, and it actually stuck at $400, with just the sheer demand that stores and everyone, all the above, have for this product right now. And there's just the absolute kind of scarcity, with all things considered, of how many are out there compared to the rest of the products. Like, again, bloated with everything else, just really, really kind of lacking on now, I guess, their hallmark product, which is collector boosters. So kind of sad to see it happen, but definitely looking forward in the discussion in the comment section below. And again, I promise you part 2 will come, where I'm able to sit down by the computer and just kind of, I know people typically don't like scripted videos, and I don't know if I'm actually good at doing scripted videos, but I've written down a lot of thoughts and do want to get that out. So hope you guys see you in part 2 probably tomorrow, and thanks for watching.